Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Nancy Drew, Season 4, Episode 11. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Man, the glasses, it's such a sad situation because it's like, right, I think it's so interesting kind of making them sympathetic that we've kind of shifted them towards being. Granted, it doesn't change them from, it's still very dickish that they're willing to straight up murder Nancy. The obvious thing would be, hey, this is a girl that your son likes. Of course, he's not going to be too happy if you do this. It's not until the very end that Mr. Glass kind of recognizes that when Nancy points it out. But it is true, like, your son will never forgive you. Cured him or not, he's going to always carry that, his greatest sin that he'd never be able to erase, which is ironic considering kind of like how the first Sin Eater's sin was him eating, kind of a sin that led to his own creation and stuff. So it's like, it's interesting how that, and that kind of comes even more full circle, not even just in that capacity, but other elements of this episode, which we'll get to. But it's a sin he'd have to carry for the rest of his life of like, yeah, I'm alive, but it cost Nancy her life, especially when it's like, it's not, because taking Nancy's life isn't just taking Nancy's life, you're kind of destroying everyone that she's connected to, her crew, her dad, considering like that's the only person in this world she kind of has left. Once again, kind of an ironic statement to kind of make considering like the discoveries he makes this episode. But either way, and especially how that like coincides with Nancy's own guilt. I thought that was such an interesting development because I treated it as like, well, Nancy's the true seeker that she is. I mean, I figured she'd have issue with, like, what did I do that I got rid of my sin? Like, I don't know what that is. The fact is, I would utilize that sin because she even says it later on because Bess is like, why is it so important to you that you figured this out? Because for Nancy, it's like, I don't know who I am. If I'm capable of doing that, the same thing that someone like Bree or Judge Abbott did. They did such horrible things and called to the Sin Eater to cover up. And what about me? What does that say about me? Like, she's been so lost for so long, and now it's like a situation of like, she found, like, she's always in her core knew who she was. She always took solace in knowing who she was. Yeah, she got lost along the way, but that's never been an aspect. Well, I mean, it's been an aspect to some extent. It's like, right, you found out about Lucy, you found out, about like the secret that your mom and dad were keeping, but then it's also, but like, I think she found some solid ground, and now it's shaking now because it's like, who am I then? If I'm the type of person that's capable of this, what does that make me? Like, and that's why she was, I like I said, I interpreted it as just like, right, she's the mystery solver that she is. She can't let a mystery go unsolved. I thought that's all there was to it, but to know that there's like a powerful element to like, what kind of person am I if I'm able to go that far, do something like that? So, and why she is so desperate. Because the device got used on her, so she only got a fragment of a memory of what happened to her, what she did, whatever sin was eaten. She never got a full jolt of it because Ryan ended up saving her beforehand. But obviously, Bess ended up being the first one to find out. It's like, yeah, I kind of heard everything, and so, well, kind of ties into Ace's story because, like, right, you saw a fire. There's a Jane Doe that Ace is getting attached to. Well, the ghost of a Jane Doe Ace is getting attached to, and she died potentially by fire. So now Nancy's like, did I have some connection to that? That's the thing. Like, Nancy isn't just like, oh, I'm gonna wildly just go out and murder somebody. That's what it's like. It doesn't make sense what that's about. That's why even last episode I was like, it's got to be a lie, right? Like, because Nancy isn't the type of person who would do something like that. I'm like, what sin could she have gotten eaten? And we still don't know. Even by the end of the episode, where even she's still speculating on that part. It's also interesting, too, when you kind of tie in, like, other people's stories, too. Like, for example, George's, because it ties in heavily, especially with the Abbott angle, because Abbott's been trying to reach out to George, but George won't forgive him. Which I was wondering why Nick felt like he was almost taking that so personal, but I guess it's like, right, he made a mistake, and he kind of wanted forgiveness. I mean, granted, he went to jail and everything for what he did, so I was wondering if, like, Nick was correlating, like, right, did I not deserve forgiveness? Like, everyone's made mistakes. Granted, Judge Abbott made a pretty big one covering up someone's crime. I mean, it's not as bad as Bree. Like, she kind of let someone die and then kind of erased the memory of it. But, I mean, well, that was kind of like her dad. But still, So it's bad, and Judge Abbott, he's trying to look for a way because Maggie won't answer his calls because he's trying to reach out, and George is kind of like, well, then just leave me alone, because obviously for George, it cuts so deep. This is the first person that kind of, when she's been trying to go down this lawyer path, he was the person that kind of gave her a chance. It's like, you kind of believed in me, and now I find out, like, obviously she was devastated when she found out the truth about what he did, and now he is too, and like, he wants to make things right. So later on, when there's an opportunity, like, hey, your friends, they're trying to sacrifice her to the sin eater because she's the last person who sinned that it ate. Why don't I go to the sin eater? It erases my sin, and then like I could get sacrificed, which George was kind of a-okay with. Not really a-okay with, but she kind of didn't stop him, which Nick was like, why would you do that? And for her, it's like, well, it gives us more time. And besides, like, are we really going to care about a piece of crap like Abbott, or are we going to care about Nancy? But, Nick gives the whole kind of Captain America speech of, we don't sacrifice lives. And George was kind of okay with it, but at the end of the day, like, George is a good person. Like, it got to her, because if something had happened to Abbott, it would have been on her, and she recognizes that. Like, I didn't tell him to do it, but I also, and it's just like, no. Like, this isn't, for one, it's not going to redeem him in the way that he wants it to. So it's like, don't do this. You want to make things right. You want to try and make things right. I don't know if you'll be able to, but at the very least, you could be on the right path to it. I can help you. It doesn't mean I'm going to be like all chummy with you going forward, but like, this isn't the way to go about it. So George came to this on her own. Nick kind of came to stop her. I was worried that Nick was going to try and take Abbott's place. So instead of Abbott being the one, I thought he was going to be the one that confesses sin so that he becomes the last one. I thought that's what Nick was going to do, but that didn't end up happening. So I think and it plays into the whole element too of George, and because Nick's going on this trip with like Jade. And it's just like, yeah, she's kind of sad because, like, right, their roads were so connected for so long. And then obviously after season 3, like, they ended up splitting, but it's just kind of like a thing of not like their roads taking them to different paths. But at the very least, she's like, no, like, Jade's great. Like, I love Jade, but it's just like us being on 2 different roads, kind of like you potentially not being around. It's like, because that entire group is kind of going their separate ways in so many different fashions in so many ways. I think it's just going to be like, right, it's going to be sad not having you around, like, because our roads aren't going to be connected. But at least while you're on your road and I'm on mine, at least we'll be able to, we can, as long as we're able to see each other's roads, I'm fine with that. Or it's just kind of like, right, let's never lose touch. Like, let's always, even if our roads take us different paths, that we can always see each other's paths and be like, hey, see each other down our respective paths. I thought that was kind of beautiful. I don't know. I'm gonna go, like, it's weird, but I really like the way Leah Lewis's hair was, like, especially with that, like, silver thing she had in her hair. I was like, oh, I really like that. I don't know why. I was like, oh, I really like that. But it's kind of this 2 months. Once again, I'm kind of bummed they didn't end up being a couple by the end of the series. Like I said, I'm curious how much of this was just like, let's go this direction with things. It's like, it's not going to be the couplings that you thought it was. I mean, there's been so many shifts in the couplings in this situation. I mean, no one's ending up with who they started off with, Because it's like, right, because it started off with Nick and Nancy. That didn't happen. And then George and Nick are sadly not a thing. And even Bess and Elizabeth are, so like, there's so many couplings that were like there early in the show that aren't here now, so. There's also Ace leading the Seder, because it's Passover. He has to lead the Seder. And I love how his dad's just kind of like, oh, he's not ready. He's not ready. I'm like, why are you being so anal about this? Because it's like, he didn't even remember it was Passover. He's like, yeah, I did. He's like, every year you tell me I can't lead it. So obviously some other supernatural stuff was happening at the time, but was able to kind of cover that up. Obviously because he was kind of out of the loop of everything that was going on. So he ended up kind of doing it. Obviously, his dad even said, like, hey, you stumbled a little bit, but hey, you're even more ready than I was at the time. And I love that he was like, yeah, that was when he was able to ask Ace's mom's parents for her hand in marriage. And he was like, yeah, I pretty much crushed it. So, but it's like, yeah, you're even more ready than I am. So passed over like the book. He's like, yeah, I have my notes in there for you as well. So it's like beautiful passing of the torch, obviously. And I was like, that was kind of a nice moment. I do love how their relationship has been complicated. Obviously, when we were first kind of really introduced to it, we recognized like how complicated it was. And there's still some bumpy roads, but just to see how much their relationship has kind of developed. Because I think Ace has always had a good relationship with his mom. His relationship with his dad's always been complicated. You know, I legitimately forgot for a second. I was just thinking about it. I was like, bringing up Ace's dad. I was like, oh, right, you have a half sibling out there. I completely forgot about that because that was like that was a season 2 storyline. Yeah, I was about to say, was that season 1? I was like, no, that was a season 2 story. I'd actually completely forgotten about that. It's funny because like obviously like all of George's siblings showed up in this episode, which is kind of nice to get to see all of them one final time. It's just kind of like a reminder of like, man, you guys were like super, super young. I mean, it's just like, right, you were actually kids. Now it's like you're like full grown teen. It's almost like you're full, almost adults. And it's weird. It's one of those things where you're like, yeah, it's 4 years, but to see these like, because you don't see her siblings that much. You saw them a lot more. Once again, I think season 1 and season 2, you probably saw them a lot more and they popped up. Only one of her siblings popped up last season, I think. So to just kind of be able to get all of them. And I just love the whole Ted thing of just kind of, everyone was walking away. It's like, Ted. And then Ted gets up and walks away from where she is. She's just kind of like, yeah, just off on her own. Like when they were ransacking the Historical Society and it's like, oh, so you got this from a garage sale, huh? Get out of here. Just go. And I love it. It's like, Narc says, what? It's like, go, get out of here. And then Nick stops. Ted, and she just stands up from the steps and walks down. I love that she just pops up out of nowhere. Maybe that's always been a thing about her character, and it's been so long, so I just didn't remember. Because she was there when Nick and George were having their conversation, and she kind of, like, him and her had that whole Moses conversation about, yeah, like, because, like, Nick was like, yeah, I don't think people liked Moses, because the whole, like, walking as long as they did and kind of having to follow Moses. I'm sure there's a lot of people who kind of doubted and kind of actually, I don't know, wanted to believe, but probably like straight up hated the guy just because of, you know, circumstances we're in because we decided to follow you and everything. So, but going back to the glasses really quickly, it is kind of sad that once again, it's like, yes, they start off kind of douchey and then you find out like, oh, there's a little sentimental element to it. Like once again, they were working with the team last episode, but their all too willingness to sacrifice Nancy is kind of rough. I mean, even like implanting that paralytic thing on her, like, oh yeah, on her, like being like, yeah, I press this, like, it sends a paralytic. If I do it a lot, you could die, but hey, at least make your death matter. And I know you care about our son, so let your death matter, and you die so that my son can be free from this curse. So, like, you understand it. I was also surprised to see them kind of get arrested at the end of the episode. It's like, right, you did kidnap people, and you were trying to sacrifice someone for a ritualistic situation, so it's like understandable. A wrench in this I wasn't expecting was also her name is Callie. It's not Kelly. I think I called her Kelly last episode. It's Callie. So that turned, we find out the truth of it. I was like, I knew she had something to do with this, but I wasn't expecting the development to be what it is. I was like, right, what, like, did she? I was like, because like. I was thinking, like, my entire thought was, I've said this in the previous review of, like, I thought she was going to had a sin eaten, and I thought that was going to be the irony behind it, like, she's all against the supernatural and stuff, and she utilized it, or maybe the supernatural come, like, their way, and she'll be the one that has to, return to the Drew crew for help. Turns out she's connected to the supernatural because her family lineage, for one, they're the ones behind. She's the one that it's her family's cabin that she used to print the photos of those who used to sin eat her, and because her job is to be the minder for it. It's like she's the one that watches out for the sin eater. It's been her family's duty since the beginning. So that's why she's so like, oh yeah, like about this like she's like, yeah, and like saying that this town is better for it. It's like, yeah, eating up all these crimes, because it's like by eating away these crimes, that by making them technically never happen, you're putting these people on different paths. And, you know, it's like, right, Bree became who she became. Judge Abbott kept going down the route he did. So I guess that's her justification. But it is like, you are eating away terrible things. There are crimes being committed that you are not directly responsible, but you are complicit in protecting it, keeping it going, even to the point she's like, yo, we work together right now. I don't like any of you. I don't care for any of you. My job is to protect the Sin Eater. And if you try to break your curse like the Glasses did, I will destroy all of you. So I'm like, okay, so definitely puts her in an antagonistic position. But it's like, what do you do about the whole Tristan of it all? He's still the Sin Eater. So, and if you break that, like, are we going to have Callie as like a final antagonist or something? Because that's what I'm curious about. Like, why you've been so going after... I guess because she's been so outwardly with the supernatural, and you're trying to, because you know this town's history with the supernatural, considering you're directly connected to one of the town's longest running secrets connected to the supernatural. But it's like, why have you been going after Bess so hard after all of this? And it's just, that's why I'm like, God, you suck in that regard of just like, it makes you a hypocrite in my bag. So I'm like, why? Maybe it's just kind of like, hey, she kind of sucks as a person. Maybe that's all there is to it. I mean, because in her mind, it's like, what role does a Sin Eater do? It basically kind of keeps the town wholesome and blah, 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 so on and so forth, right? I guess that's supposed to be the justification for it. But what about... It's kind of like you're keeping like this certain image of what this town is, and you're kind of... You're saying the town is better with the Sin Eater in it because it keeps the town what it is. But I'm like, I don't... Her justification is kind of wild to me. At least my understanding of it. Just, I'm so curious to see how that plays out. Are we just going to leave the Sin Eater situation as is? I was like, I don't think you... I mean, you've only got 2 episodes left, but I'm like, there's no way you're just going to leave that as is. They're going to find another way to kind of break that curse. I'm curious how Tristan's going to feel when it's like, yeah, I'm back to human form, and oh, cool, my parents are in jail. It's like, well, to be fair, they try to sacrifice the girl I'm super into, so I get their reasoning, but I wasn't going to be down with that, so I'm kind of glad that didn't play out that way, so... Going with Nancy really quickly, she did try to talk to the ghost because she's trying to understand why the ghost, what happened to the ghost. Is like, if she can solve it, once again, maybe she'll find out what happened or like what sin she got erased. But Ace found out about what was going on because the ghost, she kind of went into like a flurry after Nancy trying to ask questions about what happened, and Ace confronted her about it. It's like, this is the first... Because it's like, right, I'm trying to solve this mystery. Why aren't you? And for Ace, it's like, I like her, and I don't want her to go away. It's like the exact thing that Bess was like, be careful of this happening. So... Because you're kind of... You are putting your life on hold for someone that doesn't have a life anymore. I mean, granted, George's circumstance... I mean... Best Antoinette's circumstances were... It wasn't Antoinette, right? I think so. I'm trying to remember now. I said, no, it's Odette. Yeah, I was like, I knew Antoinette sounded wrong. It's Odette. Because I think I said it a previous episode or whatever, and I completely blanked on it right now. But either way, she was possessing George's body, so it was a bit of a different circumstance. But still, it is a thing of... Yeah, you're kind of putting your life on hold for someone who doesn't have a life anymore. So I don't think that's going to work out for Ace, but it is complicated because, I mean, that's why he doesn't want it solved, because he likes her. It's the first person he's kind of found post him and Nancy. At least she found someone, and it's like, right, we both wanted us to be able to both move on no matter how much it hurt. And so we're both kind of in a position where we're both okay. It's like, to be fair, neither one of them is in a good situation with the person they like. It's like, yeah, the guy she likes is, He's a sin-eating monster, reincarnated soul over and over again, which we still don't know. We never got an answer for why the first sin eater's like, I know you, we've walked this path before. Maybe that ties into some of the stuff that Nancy was kind of bringing up at the end. Her and Ace, we'll get to that in a second. But then there's also Ace, who's into a ghost. So it's like, Yeah, neither. Both of our relationship post each other ends up being so complicated. That's interesting. Also, the fact is, her and Ace are able to touch, and so she's like, oh, maybe if their feelings are so strong, then maybe that's why they're able to touch, but maybe not. Maybe it does seem like, based on what Nancy was saying, like maybe there is more reason why. Why is it the ghost is connected to him more so than anybody else? The fact is they're able to physically touch like that. That does seem like, I was like, had that even really come up before now in that regard? So why does she feel this special connection? Who is she? Especially in a situation where Nancy feels like she'll never get the answers of what happened. Because Ryan gave her the photo and was telling her, regardless of what you did, know that obviously that's not going to change how people feel about you. We all love you. You have people in your life who love you, and that's never going to change. So Nancy ends up bringing that to Ace and says, like, look at that timestamp. The day of my mom's, like, memorial, like, the, anniversary for my mom's, like, memorial. It's like, you called me to meet me, and then, like, this is sometime after we talked, because it's like 11:41. So she's like, whatever it is that happened, I think it's because both of us has something to do with your Jane Doe. And it's like, maybe that's why she kind of got mad about Nancy, and also why she's connected to Ace, because there's some connection there. It's like, whatever the sin was, she ate it not only for her sake, she also ate it for Ace's sake. That maybe she was like, whatever it was, maybe she could live with it, but maybe she didn't want Ace to have to live with it because she cares about him. I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it more maybe the next two episodes. Not maybe, we definitely will, but I'm so curious to see how that all plays out. And finally, there's the whole Gene of it. The moment her and Nancy kind of ran into each other, it's like, they haven't been around each other enough. It's still kind of like this weird, awkward thing of like, she doesn't have an issue with Gene, but it's just like, still awkward around each other. And it's like, oh, I'm here looking into something for a case. And then I also love her being like, well, if that's the case, if your client kind of wants to hide their identity when it means they're guilty, it's like, well, Nancy was looking into this because she was trying to figure herself out. So it's just like that kind of, Gene kind of saying that kind of happened at the wrong time, because now Nancy's like, oh, I guess I am guilty of sin based on what she was saying. But she was like, oh yeah, I came here to check on a bunion situation, which Carson later on was like, bunions? Like the last time I saw her feet, they were fine. It's like, she's got like the feet of a baby. I mean, except bigger. And Nancy's kind of like, I'm dealing with stuff right now. Okay, Dad, I don't want to have this conversation. This is weird. I even love it when at this Seder, it's like, oh, go ahead, you should take your shoes off. She's like, I don't want to take my shoes off. And then he's like, oh yeah, be careful where you're stepping, because there might be broken glass in my cup. She's like, I want you to stop bringing up my feet, Carson. And it turns out she's pregnant. I figured as much. It felt like that's a I'm pregnant and I'm hiding it situation. But now it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? And for Jean, she's still figuring it out. Interesting timing too, because obviously the most recent episode of Family Law had Erica Sarah in it, and I'm sure she's going to be in like future episodes, considering who her character is and everything. I say that, but it's like, obviously, once again, this shows like a season behind here in the U.S., but still, timing's just really interesting in that regard. But either way, she hasn't really decided, and she's asking Carson what he wants to do. It's like, right, he has empty nest now. And it's like, right, Nancy's you got a grown kid, so it's like, are you really going to sacrifice that kind of freedom that you have now to kind of go down this route again? I think he will. I'm sure Nancy would like having a baby around, and I think it's just kind of having the house be something except not empty, I think would probably be nice for him in so many capacities. And I think Nancy would like having a little sibling. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'd assume that's the route we're going, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.